You can sit over there because anywhere behind that camera, you're grand. You're good.
You got some people there with you, Colin?
Yes. People from Ireland, believe it or not, Rona, we cannot shake them off.
Oh, I know you.
We've even got people from England here and other
Maria
places.
Cordelli will be there, and Maria Gillen and all them, they'll be there.
I would introduce them to you. My wife's here, Rona. Aoife from the Yarn Festival is here, and her daughter Alana, Catherine. Suter Karak is here, and Abdul is here.
Fantastic.
And you're not going to be able to see them because the camera's not on them. Oh, you can see Aoife in the background there.
I can.
Going to be very odd to have the audience behind you, Rona.
Yeah.
It's making me nervous, I have to say.
Okay, you can start.
Okay. Do I need to keep this up here, or can it be here?
You can just keep it there.
Keep it here. Okay. Well, unbelievably, ladies and gentlemen, we are broadcasting to you live, as they say, from Marrakesh. We're in the World Storytelling Cafe, and we have just had a fantastic morning walking around the souks and shopping and eating, and this is a totally amazing place, and the festival is fantastic. And one of the things that we have noticed when we were here, just one of the things, are the number of cats. There are cats everywhere, and people in Marrakesh seem to love their cats, and you can see people feeding them out in the streets, and they literally are everywhere. So I thought I would tell you a story about cats. And the story that I'm going to tell you happened many years ago. There was a little young boy called Alistair. And he was only 12 years old, and he was the nicest, loveliest little, best-mannered little boy you have ever seen. He was lovely. And one day his mother asked him if he would run an errand to his grandparents' house. Well, his grandparents lived about 5 or maybe 6 miles away. They lived far away from the village. And it would have been hard to find, except young Alistair had been there many times with his mother. But why he was so excited on this morning was because it was the first time that he had ever made that journey on his own. And he jumped out of bed that morning. He ran down and got his breakfast at the table. He pulled on his clothes and he was out that door like a shot. And he ran the whole way from his little house in the village to his grandparents' cottage. He only stopped once, in fact, and that was just for a pee. And keep quiet in the back there now. When he got to so these are the cheapest seats in the back here. When he got to his grandparents' cottage, they were delighted to see him. And his grandmother opened the door. She gave Alistair a big hug and she brought him in and she set him up to the table to a big plate of potatoes and butter and goat's milk. And his grandmother and his grandfather sat at the table with him. And of course, they did what all country people do. They wanted to hear all the gossip, all the news from the village. And young Alistair, as he was eating his potatoes and drinking his goat's milk, he told his grandparents everything. Well, they just couldn't stop smiling and talking. And every now and again, his grandmother would give him another big hug because she hadn't seen him in such a long time. And eventually, his grandfather looked out the little window of the cottage and he said, Alistair, if you want to make it home before it's dark, son, you would need to go now. Well, young Alistair got another big hug from his grandmother, another hug from his grandfather. His grandmother put a big piece of bread in one pocket and a piece of cheese in the other, and she sent him out that door home. Well, Alistair his belly was full of buttermilk, potatoes. He could have easily lay down and slept. And so he didn't run the whole way home. He was 12 years old. He dilly-dallied all the way home, and everything caught his eye. Smelled flowers. He looked up at the sky. A bird would fly by and it would catch his eye. And he was about halfway home when up behind him came a big black cloud. He didn't see it, but the next thing he felt, hailstones and rain on the back of his neck. He looked round, he could see the dark clouds, and he began to run. As luck would have it, there was a cottage about halfway along. It was an old, disused cottage. No one had lived in it for years. The door was hanging on one hinge. The windows were falling out. The roof was falling in. And he ran in there past that old hanging door. And there by the old fireplace that was crumbling down, there was a little nook, and he wedged himself in there. And he listened to the hail and the rain lashing on the old thatched roof of that cottage. Well, he was only 12 years old. He was full of potatoes and buttermilk. He got quite sleepy, and he closed his eyes and he pulled his coat around him. And before long, he was fast asleep. Well, I don't know how long he slept there, but when he woke, he was cold and he was frightened because it was pitch black. He looked up to the roof. The only thing that caught his eye was a hole in the thatch, and he could see that there was a full moon, and the light was shining down through that hole in the roof. And as his eyes began to adjust to the darkness, he could see clouds drifting past. And then he saw some movement. He thought it was an animal. He wasn't sure what it was. And as he stared in the darkness, this creature, whatever it was, it came down through that hole. It dropped down onto the floor and it began to move around the floor. And then Alistair could see what it was. It was a huge black cat. Its fur was pure black, silky, sleek, shining, and its eyes were pure green. And as he looked at the cat, more movement caught his eye. And another cat dropped down in the same way, and then another cat. And they began to rub their heads around one another and lick each other's fur the way cats do, and they began to purr. Give me some purring. Give me more purring. They're not very good at purring. And they rubbed their heads around one another and licked each other. And eventually, oh yeah, they did another thing. They meowed. Meow. And then eventually, those three big black cats transformed into three old women. And they began to laugh. And they began to talk in human voices. And then one of them said, I smell something. It's a boy. I smell a boy. And another one said, a boy? A living boy? Yes. And they looked over towards the fireplace and they began to stalk over, three of them, side by side, moving their shoulders the way a cat does when it's stalking its prey. And they came towards Alistair. He closed his eyes as tightly as he could. They came so close he could feel their breath. He could smell their breath, and it wasn't pleasant. And one of them said, we should kill him. Alistair held his breath. He didn't move a muscle. And another one said, no, let him live. Let him live. And the third one said, yes, let him live. He might be sleeping and he won't have heard or seen us. And the other one said, and if he isn't sleeping and he is listening to us, he will know that if he tells a single soul about this, we will come back and we will kill him. We will tear him to pieces and eat him. And then those three old women, they turned back into cats. They leapt up through that hole in the thatch and they were gone. Alistair sat there, holding his breath, not moving a muscle for as long as he could, till his muscles began to cramp and ache. And then he opened one eye, and then the other. He looked around, and he could just see the first grey light of dawn coming through that hole. And those old women, those cats, were gone. Alistair pulled his coat around him. He looked around that room. He ran for the door. And when he got out into the daylight, he ran for his life the whole way home, never stopping, not for a second. And when he burst in through the door, his mother was stirring a pot of porridge. She hadn't even missed him. She thought he was staying at his grandparents' house. She tried to get him to take some breakfast, but he wouldn't eat. And he wouldn't leave her side. 3 days, he hung onto her apron strings, and not a bite would he eat. She became very worried about him. She said, Alistair, what has happened to you? Because he was usually always hungry, a bit like Alana behind me here. And he said, Mother, I cannot tell you. Of course you can tell me, son. I'm your mother. You can tell me anything. I cannot, Mother. I cannot tell you. Yes, you can. Tell me what's wrong. Mother, I cannot. They'll kill me. They said they would kill me if I told anyone. Who would kill you? The witches, Mother. The witches? What witches? And before Alistair knew it, he had told his mother the whole story. Please, Mother, please promise me you will not tell anyone. If you tell anyone, they will come and kill me. No, they won't. Don't worry. I will not tell anyone. Well, eventually she got Alistair to take something to eat. But she was so upset by what her son had told her, she decided that she would go and speak to her clergyman, her priest. And she put her coat on. She went out the front door of her cottage and she went down the street towards the priest's house. She got halfway there. She met her best friend. And she said, I'm going to tell you something, but you must promise not to tell anyone. What is it? And she told her the story about Alistair. Don't tell a living soul. Of course I won't. It won't pass my lips. Her best friend went in home. Her husband came home from the fields. She had his dinner ready for him. And over dinner, she said, don't tell a living soul. But young Alistair, his mother was telling me, and she told her husband the whole story. And she said, don't tell a living soul. Of course I won't tell anyone. It won't pass my lips. He went down into the village that night. Told all his friends in the tavern. And by the next day, the story was all over the village. Everyone was talking. Did you hear about Alistair and the 3 witches? They're coming back to kill him. What? Witches in our village? I knew it. I knew there was some evil in the village. My cow hasn't given milk for 2 weeks. And before they knew it, everyone was pointing fingers, all of them, in the wrong direction. Well, the witches never came for Alistair. And of course, it blew up quickly, but it blew back down again. And of course, people started to talk about other things in a week and 2 weeks and 3 weeks' time. And eventually, young Alistair got over his fear and he began to eat the way he had done before. He began to forget about the 3 cats and the 3 witches. Well, time passed. A year, in fact. And now young Alistair was 13 years old. One day his mother asked him to run an errand to his grandparents' house. Of course, he said, hadn't seen his grandparents in a year. He came down the stairs, he had his breakfast, he put his coat on, he ran out that door, he ran the whole way to his grandparents' cottage. His grandmother opened the door and she saw it was Alistair. She brought him in and she gave him a big hug. She set him down to the table. What did she set him down to the table to? They weren't even listening. Potatoes, of course, and butter. And what else? Buttermilk. He sat there and he ate his food, and his grandmother asked him all the news. He told his grandmother and his grandfather everything that was going on in the village. Well, late in the afternoon, his grandfather looked out the window and he said, Alistair, if you want to make it home before it's dark, you better make tracks. And so they got his coat on, they put a piece of bread in one pocket, a piece of cheese in the other, and they set him off down that road back home. Of course, he was full of potatoes and buttermilk, and he was only 13 years old, and he began to dilly-dally. Sniffed at every flower, he looked at every bird that flew over. And he got about halfway, near to where that old disused cottage was. And as he was walking along the road, kicking stones and looking around him, up behind him came, not a cloud this time, but 3 big black cats, their shoulders, riding over one another, the way cats do when they're stalking their prey. Well, Alistair got that feeling that you get when somebody's staring into the back of your neck. He looked around and he saw those 3 cats and he began to run for all he was worth. He ran to that old cottage. The door was hanging on one hinge. He went straight in and he ran over to that fireplace. He got himself squeezed into that little nook, pulled his coat around him, and he waited. He could hear those cats purring. He could hear them meowing. And one by one, they dropped in through that hole in the thatch. And as one, they came towards Alistair with their shoulders riding over one another. They came closer and closer and closer. Alistair closed his eyes. He pulled his coat around him. And then there was a blast swept through that room. There was a cloud of dust and hail swept through that room. And those 3 giant black cats, they disappeared up through that hole quicker than they had come down. Alistair sat there with his eyes closed, and when he opened them, the place was full of dust and dirt, and it slowly cleared. And when it did, standing there in the doorway was his grandfather with his old double-barreled shotgun, and the smoke still curling out the barrels. And he looked at young Alistair and he smiled and he said, that's the last we'll see of those 3 old witches. And he took Alistair home by the hand. And Alistair lived happily ever after with his mother and his father. And in that village, that was the last time that anyone ever saw a black cat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colin. That was a fantastic story about cats. So, good evening, everyone. I will be telling a Moroccan story, so I hope you enjoy it. As we grow, there is a saying that we say in Morocco, you don't need an elephant to add his wife. So this is something that we use like as a speaking day by day, but every saying in Morocco has a long story behind it. So the story always starts with a king and a minister, most of the time. I don't know why, but main of the story is like about just kings and ministers. The king went on a big adventure, like went to India. He made the king of India. He went there with his gifts. He gives too many gifts to the king of India from Morocco, jewelry, like animals, camels, everything. And years passes, and the king of India came to Morocco to visit back his friend in the north of Africa. Now, while the king came, he came in a big elephant, the Indian king, a huge elephant. One can like 10 people can ride and the elephant can just go. And it's the first time that Moroccans see an elephant in their life. They like there's African elephant, but this huge elephant from Asia. Nobody see it before. And the king stayed for a month, living through Moroccans. It came the time that he has to go to India back. And he wanted to give as a gift the elephant to the Moroccan king. And the Moroccan king was no brainer. Say like, okay, I will accept your gift. I will take care of this elephant as one of my horses or camels. You'll be living in Morocco as if you've been living in India. Let's give it a place to settle. Let's leave it roaming around and eat as much as he wants. So the elephant being around like farms, people's farms, eating corns, pumpkins, cucumber, eating from everywhere. And he start harming people, eating the crops. People start suffering from the elephant, and nobody can say anything to the king because, you know, like everyone's scared of the king. Like, what do you gonna say to a king? Like, is your elephant is eating my food? So all of them know that the king has a minister, is the voice of reason for the king. If you want to talk to the king, can't. He's so proudful, he will not listen to you. But the minister is the key to talking to the king. So all the people from the city gather around and go into the minister and start like complaining, the elephant being like harming our crops, our trees, stamping our like fences. He go around everywhere. He's just being harmful for us. What could we do? And the minister say like, I'm no farmer. I'm not the one who has the damage, but I can speak in your name on one condition, that you have to be at my back. I'm going to the king with you, all of you. I will talk on your behalf, so the king will listen to me. And everyone say, yeah, no, sure, like we'll be like doing the same. We just follow you to the king, like you're doing us a great favor talking to the king. Please solve this problem for us. And you say, okay, tomorrow morning we gather up before 11. I know the king will be at his palace, not hunting anywhere. So we'll go together. And all the people the next day came around, like to the door of the minister. Everyone is there. They say, okay, they start marching to the king's palace. As the minister go in, he start like putting thoughts in his brain. How are you gonna say to the king? How are you gonna like introduce the matter to him? Like he's bowing his head, walking. Every step he takes, someone just run away from the crowd. Every step, someone say, "Oh no, I'm not facing the king. Sorry, like this is too much. This is too stressful for me. Like I cannot just go to the king." And every steps until he finds his door, like himself in front of the king's door. And the guards look at him and say, like, "Good day, like minister. Usually you don't came this time. Like we know that you have days that you don't came like at this time, but this is unusual. So what do you need?" And like the king heard them, like the gatekeeper, like he said, "Is it the minister?" I say, "Yes, it's the minister. Let him in." I say, "I'm not by myself," but the guard say, "Look, I just see you. Where is the people?" The minister turned around. There is nobody. Okay, so I say, no, we'll just pass another time. I say, come in. If you came, it must be for a reason. You don't just came in like just to have fun. Usually you came for a reason. And the minister finds himself in front of the king and the people that he wants to talk on their behalf. There is nobody behind him. So he wants to teach the people a lesson. He said, like, "Dear king, you know, God created from everything a female and a male. And that elephant been here so long, feeling lonely. should get him a wife. The king said, good idea. So we could have like more elephant, and we can like have our own elephant that we go around. Like and say, yes, please. Like he's a human, he's a creature. Like we should take care of him. Like he's feeling lonely. And the minister went out, and everybody had the news that the king is looking for a female elephant for his elephant that he got from the Indian king. And they came to him and said, like, why did you ask that? It's like, you guys, you don't defend your rights. I'm not gonna speak on behalf of people who doesn't want to face their like rulers. And this is when the saying came, as you are, as you've been ruled, as you are, as you've been. If you are a fool, like people are fools, like they will have just a fool, or like Trump, for example. Sorry, Americans. So just like, I'm not trying to be political, but this is like the meaning of the story. So everyone just have to suffer for a while from two elephants coming around in their farms until they learn the lesson that they have to stand themselves for the king and ask for their rights. And this is the end of the first part of the story. So days and days goes around, and the king was a hunter all the time. He has his adventure. He's no brainer. He's just a strong king with too much pride. And every time he goes to the hunting, he takes the minister with him everywhere. And the king was so proud of his way of hunting that he's known to be chasing lions and like wolves, just like animals, like very aggressive animals. And one day he heard like there is a forest when there is a white wolf. It's a spirit wolf. I see like there is no animal who cannot hunt. There is no beast that I cannot put down. The minister said like, in the kingdom of God, everyone has his kingdom. Don't try to go somewhere you cannot like feel strong. And the king just said, I'm hunting that wolf anyway. So they went for like days looking for the wolf inside the forest. And there's a saying, if you don't cut the head of the wolf, it might bite you still, even if it's down. And he goes looking for the wolf until they find it at the river. The king pulled his bow and arrow and shot the wolf. The wolf goes down, bleeding, like getting his last breath. The king was saying, look, I chased the famous white wolf of this dark forest. And while he want to pull his arrow, the wolf bites his hand and tore off and take off two of his fingers. The king was in shock. He lost his fingers, his hunting fingers, like the one he pulled the arrows with. So he's like, what should I do now? I lost my fingers. He starts panicking. Like he's a king known for his strength. Like he cannot hold a sword now, no arrows. So what he's a king for now? Like nothing. And the minister say like, he want like to give him a bit of solace. So it might be for the better, like the minister says. The better, what comes better, like if I took, like there's two fingers missing in my hand. I have just three now in my hand. And he started to be feeling like so angry, like you should not say that to me. This is so disrespectful. Like, what do you mean? I say like, there's a meaning if you lose your finger. Maybe it's something for the better. I say like, I will not forgive you from that. I will cut off your head. Even if I like you, I love you, you are my prime minister, you're son of the reason, but I will kill you. Instead, I will put you to jail, like to rotten for years, then I will decide your fate. You say like, if you want to, the minister said like, if you want to send me to the jail, it must be also for the better. And the king feels like so furious. Let's say, take him away. Weeks passes, and the king fingers start to heal, and he wants to say like, okay, I might find a way to hunt again. So he just went by himself, trying to hunt little deers and rabbits. And every time he hunts something, he goes further and further until he reached the limit of his kingdom. And suddenly he got lost somehow. Nobody knows. but he got lost in a forest and he started hearing like noises of singing, people around fire, a language he never heard of, something very, very different from his culture. While he's getting close, trying to find out what's there, he's been caught. The tribe people caught him. They were like scouting around and found him. They say they were happy that he's been caught because these people know to give sacrifice to the kings of the mountains, the gods of the mountains. So like, we're not sacrificing any of us this year. We have a sacrifice. So they put him like to this big tree and start dancing around him every time. And he was so scared. And the shaman of this village came dancing around him and chanting his music. Hum, 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 hum. And he pulled up a knife. For the moment, he wanted to cut his throat. He looked at his hand. He said, where is his finger? We cannot give our gods an incomplete being. No way. This is not right. Fetch me another one. This is not useful. And the king was so surprised, like, oh, I guess 2 fingers, my life, it's worth it. So they say like, run, if we caught you again, we will kill you or eat you. And the king starts running out of the forest and find himself in a very arid area. Nobody's there. He'd been running for hours. He was so thirsty. And he found like a very old man sitting on a rock, just having a little barrel of water. He was so thirsty. And he came to the old man and said like, I am the king of the kingdom such and such. Can you give me your water? And the old man said, what would you give me in return? I say, I can take you to my kingdom and give you as much gold. So the wise man said, maybe you don't have a kingdom. Maybe you will die. What would you give me for a kingdom? And every time he started arguing, what would he give? Until he came to the point, he said, I will give you half of my kingdom just for a sip of water. Say, okay, if you promise, you must be honest. And he gave him a sip of water. And the king doesn't know where he's going. So he asked the old guy, like, could you show me the way? I say, like, the desert is big, and the only thing behind us is the forest with the wild people. If you go through it, we'll be eaten. So the only way ahead is to go, like, head away, like, just to keep going, like, through the desert. And he said, okay, if you will guide me, I will go. And they went until they came in a big tent. And the old guy said, like, you know, this is the king of the desert. We should go to say hi to him, and he will give us food. But there is something with it. It should not smell bad. You should not go to your business. No far, no pee. Just you should. He has strength, like so. He smells like it's like things that reek, like smells. So if you want to pee, you have to walk like days. Then you have to pee. You can't smell you. So they say, okay, let's go there. And while they're sitting like around the table, been eating and drinking, now finally the king has food, and they say like to the old guy, I have to pee. The old guy say, I told you should not say that or do that. It's like, okay, what should I do? It's like, what would you give me if I tell you how you can do it without being known? Say like, okay, well, I can give you some gold. Say, no. I want the other half of your kingdom. So I say like, okay, so how is possible? Like, so I could pee without him smelling me. It's like, he allows one thing. If you laugh until you pee yourself. So I will tell a joke and you have to laugh and pee yourself. So the old guy stand up and sing a silly joke. Such like so silly that the the king of the desert start laughing, and the king start like pretending to laugh so hard to pee in himself. They say, "You pardoned, it's so funny, it's okay." And they went the next day on their way, and they say like the old guy, "I'm not a king. You are a king now, but you give me your half and the other half. You know what? I don't want a kingdom worth half of a sip of water in a pea. You can just keep your kingdom. So this is the way to your kingdom. I'm going to the other way." So the old guy left the king, living by himself. So the king went back to his kingdom, and the gods know him, bring him back, feed him, put clothes, nice clothes on him. And the first thing he remembered, he has to go to the minister. He went running to the dungeons, say like, "I'm so sorry. Thank you. Now I understand what you say. I lost my finger. It's for the better. If I didn't lose the fingers, I would be now a sacrifice for the people who like praise for the mountains." And I said like, "I told you also, if you didn't put me to the dungeons, I'll be out with you. I have all my fingers. I'll be also a sacrifice. So it's good for me also." So this is like the meaning, like if someone say like, if something bad happened to you, it must be for a reason. And thank you. Say closure.
You will close it?
Yes, we still have 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. Great job. We've only got about 5 minutes here, so we're gonna close up. I'm gonna tell you something reasonably quick. We've been where we are. You wouldn't believe what this looks like. And here's a beautiful, pristine white studio that we're in here at the top of that Word Storytelling Cafe. We're about 5 minutes from the square. What's the proper name of this big square?
Jama Alfna. Jama Alfna.
Yeah, it's about 5 minutes away if you know where you're going. About an hour and 45 minutes if you get lost, like I did on the way here. But and apparently someone has told me this, that there was a tree there that the storytellers traditionally gathered around. I have not found this tree yet, but it's very apparently was very sacred here. And so there are, is that true? Do you know about this?
Which tree you mean?
You see, it may not be true. I'm surrounded by storytellers here, ladies and gentlemen.
I never known about this.
No, there you go. You got it from one of the locals. I'm going to have to take that up. I'm not even going to name the person who told me that, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, it has put trees in my head, and we've been talking about them all morning here. And of course, trees in Ireland are really sacred. There's fairy trees, there's rowan trees, oak trees, all kinds of magic associated with them. I'm going to tell you one from where a story about a tree from where I come from. I want to take you back to the year 1588. And a great fleet of ships, a Spanish armada, left Spain with the intention of invading England and defeating Queen Elizabeth and making the country Catholic again. Well, they got to Calais, where they were supposed to meet a great army, the Duke of Parma coming from Holland. He didn't show up. And then the English Navy attacked. There was a small skirmish known as the Battle of Gravelines. And after that, unfavorable winds blew the Spanish armada north, and they had to go right around the north coast of Scotland and the long way home. Sadly, there was 130 ships. Less than half made it back to Spain. A lot of them came to grief on the coast of Ireland, on the north coast and on the west coast. And I live on the northeast coast of Ireland, and just near to where I live is a place called Ballygally. And local legend has it that a young sailor from the Spanish Armada washed up on a beautiful beach there. And the local people carried his body inland and they buried him on a piece of consecrated ground. And from his body, there were sweet chestnuts in his tunic pocket, and from his body grew a sweet chestnut tree. Well, in the year 2020, that tree fell over from sheer old age. And I was asked to write something to commemorate its passing. And this is the story that I came up with. It was just called the Spanish Armada tree, which is what this tree was known as locally. And it was much beloved for the last 430 odd years. So here we go. 431 years ago, almost to the day, I was washed up on the sandy shore of Ballygally Bay in the pocket of a sailor fighting for the Spanish king against the cruel weather and the English Virgin Queen. The poor sailor, he drowned at sea and never got to taste my sweet chestnut flesh, but I did not go to waste. I survived that wretched journey from the sunny coast of Spain and found myself in Ireland, starved by cold and rain. And there I might have died myself, shriveled in my skin, but they buried that poor sailor and me along with him. I shivered in that cold, wet ground, so far away from home, praying for the sun to warm the fertile peaty loam. Next spring, I poked my head up. I never felt so brave, but I was greeted by a wind that was colder than the grave. How I longed for my homeland of oranges and heat, where the olive groves are fragrant and all the chestnuts sweet. I have seen many things in my long life. Who hasn't, I suppose? But for every question answered, 100 more were posed. From this quiet graveyard, I have seen wars and famine rage. The foolishness and greed of man is etched on every page. I suppose I should be grateful it was man's foolishness brought me here, but so far away from my homeland, the price I paid was dear. I am not a common conker tree the Irish schoolboys climb. I am a sweet Spanish chestnut, estranged from my own kind. And though from all the native trees I have stood apart from the singing of the blackbird and the chaffinch, I took heart. The robin through dark winter days, noisy rooks in spring, and oh, what joy each Sunday morning to hear the people sing. I have stood against wind and rain, my boughs have creaked with snow, but still in all, my old wooden heart never ceased to grow. For no matter where you find yourself, you must do the best you can. Be you sweet Spanish chestnut tree or native Irish man. But now, alas, my time has come. As to all things, it must. And to you, my fellow beings, my old wooden heart, I trust.
Conclude our live session. So thank you, everyone. And do you have any word, Rona and Keith, that you want to add or say before we finish? We don't hear you.
Just unmuting. I enjoyed it immensely. It was terrific. Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your stay there, Colin, and all you guys that I can't see but that are there. Have a great time. I'm well, Jill.
Thank you, Rona.
Very much, thank you. I thought it's got to be more of a discussion though, from what it says on the website. Panel discussion.
Yeah, not this session, Keith. There might be a panel discussion later in the program, but not this session.
Well, I got it down for to now, but anyway, I'll check. But,
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I've given up trying to figure out what time it is. I just press the button and hope for the best.
Thank you.
See you all again. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Do you want my phone there, Karen? Send my whiskers are down the stairs. Let's get me.
Ali, Ali, Do you know when the next session is?
6 o'clock. Today, 6 o'clock.
I don't think you can hear me now.
It's today, 6 o'clock.
Okay, there you go. John, we just want to get a wee picture taken here, and then we're good.
Right, so can I just ask you to stand at the side a wee bit, Dennis? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, that's very
Can
good.
I join you? Thank you very much.
Wow. Sophie.